Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the third episode of Add Water and Stir with Mimi from Complicated Melody, who is taking a sip on something right now.
A little
And,
wine in my glass.
and I'm Adoptive Black Mom, and we are bringing it to you live for the third time, and we are excited to be here.
Welcome to our third podcast.
Yes, crumbling towers of strength. So, if you've been following us the last two times, you know that first we kind of take a little bit of time to talk about what's been going on in our lives and parenting our little ones or big ones, such as the case may be. And then we're going to jump into a couple of topics tonight on self care and kind of these kind of really kind of high drama moments where some families find themselves coming and becoming engaged with the foster care system. And then we'll talk about ratchet stuff later. So, which I haven't figured out which ratchet thing I'm going to talk about, but I'm sure I'll come up with something about it. so Mimi, why don't you tell us what's been going on with you? If we've been following your blog, girl.
So it's good to see you again. 2 weeks seems like a long time, but it's
No,
good to see you again.
it's
But
good to see you.
so if you haven't caught up with us on the blog, my blog is complicatedmelody.wordpress.com, and so a couple of main things that's been going on. We met with our adoption worker from CPS, and we're moving towards adoption placement mid August. So
Yay!
adoption placement is the time where you move from foster care to when they actually move you into preparing you to do your finalization of your adoption. So that's exciting. So we should be, I'm thinking, and I'm bad at predicting these things, but I'm thinking maybe end of September, early October. That's what I'm predicting. So
That is
yes,
so exciting.
it is exciting. It's been quick. Like she's been with us, what, 5 months, 4 months, 5 months. And so that's been a quick 5 months. But in the meantime, since we moved to adoption placement, of course, I got all the paperwork, and I talked about that in the last podcast. And what I did was I looked up her family, her biological family,
Mm.
on Facebook because the caseworker made it seem as though they couldn't be found. And I said, I'm sure they can be found. And I just want to make sure, I just wanted to know where they were, just to try to keep track in a way so that when it's time for her to find them, it won't be like such a hardship of finding them. And so I looked them up on Facebook and I found some of her biological family.
Mm.
And so that with that came a lot of emotions around that. Um, just knowing that her family loved her and missed her, and questioning, you start to question, or I start to question my role in the process of adopting someone who also already has a family,
Mm.
that cared about her.
Mm.
So that I wrote about that on the blog. Then sometime that weekend, I think it might have been the same day, that day, but Nana had an attitude. She didn't want mommy, and it felt like a rejection. And she just wanted daddy, and it just felt like such a rejection after I had just found out that she had a, I mean, I already always knew she had a family, but to actually in the flesh know there's a
Mm.
biological people behind it. So it just felt like a true rejection, and I just kind of lost it. And maybe it's just that all this stuff was building up over time. So basically, I told Wood, take your child. You have to leave the house. And I just took some time for myself. I needed some time. But basically, I took to my bed. And then when we talk about time for ourselves, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but I took to my bed. I was in the bed with the blankets and the snacks and was like, I cannot be bothered with any of this stuff that's going on. Just, I'm checking out for right now. Um,
Oh.
and I called my mother and mother-in-law to see kind of have they felt like that. And they weren't there, and I was sad. And
Oh,
so the next day I called my mom and we ended up having like a little bit of argument and it was lots of emotions about, you know, how I felt like I wasn't being treated like a new mom and people just thought I had it all together and how come she wasn't babying me like other people, you know. And we could talk a little bit about that, about kind of the fact that when you adopt, you just are thrown right into motherhood. And so sometimes you skip a lot of the things that maybe new mothers get to experience. And people just kind of assume that you have it all together. And so
yeah.
the end result of that is mommy is coming. She's going to be here this weekend. So I'm excited about that. But that's pretty much been my 2 weeks. So basically, my 2 weeks have been like this: down, 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 down. We're like kind of right here at the flat plane right now. So I'm hoping with my mom it's going to start going up again.
Oh, that's
So
good. We are we are hopeful. We are hopeful. So,
what about you? What's been going on with you in 2 weeks?
uh,
You've had some goings on too.
it's been really, really, really busy. I'm actually leaving for my longest trip away from Hope, for business tomorrow morning, and there's some anxiety
How's the
about that.
prep for
But
that?
oh, well, I'm actually uh, podcasting from my room, and the suitcase is behind me. The clothes are in it, but it's all the toiletries that kind of make me look put together when I get
Hmm.
there.
Right.
You know, they'll get thrown in the bag. I think. Hopefully, they'll make it. Like, I guess as long as I have some concealer and some mascara, I guess I'll be okay.
You
But
look lovely. All you need is
yeah,
whatever you put on today. Just put
thank
that in the bag.
you. Thank you. But things have actually been pretty good. It's been a bit of a challenge. So, of course, during the last 2 weeks, I actually told Hope that her family, her biological, her paternal family had kind of found us. And, she took the news really well, because I didn't know if she would be mad that I kind of held on to that information for a couple of weeks. But I really kind of wanted, like, I wrote a little bit about this, I think, on Sunday, and I wanted to wait until I had something tangible to show her, and it's been interesting because she really um, doesn't seem to have any interest in having a relationship with them, at least right now.
Hmm.
And I was kind of surprised by this, but she has a lot of emotions about kind of how things went down. She did have a familial placement at one point, and it didn't work out, and she still feels some kind of way about that. And but in retrospect, now I'm kind of glad that all of this has happened because it certainly has brought her and I closer together.
Hmm.
Um, and having a few things of about and that includes things from her father has really kind of opened up the process for us really dealing with grief, because we I've realized in retrospect that we've just been tiptoeing around it, and the floodgates open, angels sang and cried. there's been there's been a lot of emotional expression, and a lot of emotional expression, and but it's been healthy. And
Right.
frankly, it's interesting, the therapeutic parenting kind of piece of kind of helping her navigate the grief has been really so much easier than navigating the I'm 13 and I'm like stupid because I'm
And the
13.
normal 13 piece of it.
Yeah, the normal stuff is like way harder than the therapeutic stuff for me. And so,
Right.
but we've done some things to really kind of acknowledge her dad, and we're just kind of really navigating the grief now, and it's sad, but it's really, really healthy, and like I said, has brought her and I to a much better place. So that's been good. Um, and that's the way we've been writing, and just single parenting, which is just hard sometimes because it's just
Yes.
there's nobody else doing stuff on a day-to-day basis. So camp pickups and like the camp hustle is strong because they have these camps that start at 9:30 and end at 3:30. What the hell am I supposed to do with that?
Who, you know what? The same thing for preschool. When you want to talk about Montessori schools or any of the, I guess, better preschools, they are made for stay-at-home parents. Yeah,
Yes,
I guess I'm thinking. So I,
yes,
I feel like there's an economic component to it. Like if you
absolutely.
have to work all day, then this is not for you.
Yes, I mean the first day at camp, I'm like, first of all, like we're the only brown people, and so I was like, huh, this is interesting. I mean, it's not a problem, but it's like, okay, cool, got it. And then they were like, oh, so what are you doing after you drop her off? I'm going to work. What are y'all doing? Well, we're
Do
going
they
to the
want to
club.
stop for coffee?
We're going to the club to go play tennis. Yeah, I can't. I got to go to work. and so, um, and so it's just kind of interesting to kind of go through that with her last week. It was a great experience for her, and she got her first like little um, camp. What is it, like completion certificate or whatever with her new name
Hmm.
on it, and woo,
Oh,
it
that's
was great.
nice. With her new name, her
Yeah,
new
her new
last name.
name. We went and so we finally got to Social Security yesterday, and got the new card ordered and all of that kind of stuff. And so we're just chipping away at the post adoption stuff. Oh, and we had our last visit with the social worker, our post
Mhm.
adoption visit. So we are done.
Official, official.
Yeah, we're done. And so, we're doing good. And so, we'll see what happens this next week. She'll have time with her, with Sister Kay, my sister, and they're heading to the beach, and it's gonna be good. I have to say, I'm excited about going to work and like stepping full time into my professional life a little bit for a few days.
You
No,
get a
no
break,
curfew. I can
right?
eat what I want to eat.
You
There's
can
no
drink as
curfew.
much wine as you want
I can
to.
drink as much wine. Like I can do whatever I want whenever I want. Like, and so I am
You
excited
sound
about
like a
five
kid
days.
yourself. Like,
I'm like
I'm
excited
breaking it
about
out.
5 days, and then I'm actually like taking 2 more days before I drive down to go get her. So it's I'm looking forward to the next week. I'm looking forward to it. We're good. It's gonna be fun.
So that was a
So
good lead in. The fact that you're
yeah,
taking 2 days before you
yeah,
actually go and pick up your child.
yes,
A good
yes,
lead into our first topic about self care. And so you
absolutely.
had since an email to me after you read it probably was read as a cry for help. Like this girl is losing it. Like, and you know what was great? Other parents wrote and said, look, this is perfectly normal for you to feel overwhelmed and to have all these emotions, and especially when you're dealing with thinking about the biological family and your family and all that. And so it's perfectly normal. And basically, you said, let's talk about self care on the next podcast. I feel like that was a little bit of a nudge, like maybe you need to think about some real self care practices. So, speaking of, tell us why you're taking those 2 days and how that fits into your self care process.
Well, I'm taking a couple of days because I need to, and I don't know when I'll
Hmm.
have an opportunity to do this again. And I want to lay in my bed and eat Cheetos with red wine and watch Ratchet TV for a couple of days, and go to the dentist and not have to figure out where I'm going to put her. And last time she had to sit in the waiting room, and I want to just I don't have the dog is going to be away. I can like
You
lay
need a
and
break.
I can just lay in my bed with crumbs and wine like for a couple of days.
That's the big girl's dream. Crumbs and wine. Okay.
Crumbs, wine, and like cable. Like just
Yes, that's it. Ratchet TV.
like I got a DVR. I don't even know why I set the DVR for stuff no more because I don't even watch
Wait a minute.
it.
So you're gonna be at home. So you're
Oh yeah,
no
you
longer
ain't know?
gonna be.
No, I'm flying back on Tuesday night. I'm flying back on
Just
Tuesday
hope
night.
no. Just hope no that you're gonna be at the house.
Look, I
I
didn't
feel like
even
this is a stealth mission. Like you're gonna sneak back into the house. Like
look. Look, I left the good pajamas are not in the bag to go with me on the trip. The good pajamas are getting put on when I get back from the trip.
what are the good pajamas with
Real
footies?
nice,
Like what?
the
What are the good
good,
pajamas?
the good $40 pajamas. Like,
So you gonna have a by yourself slumber party, huh?
Yes, yes, yes. Like I've made cookie dough. It's already in the refrigerator.
Well, you have prepped for this.
Yes.
Like, I'm gonna go to work, but when I come home, it's on.
It's
Okay.
a lot because I don't know when I'm going to have this kind of time. We're going to take another vacation before she goes back to school, but it's important to recharge the battery. And now that we're over so many hurdles and we really are us,
Mhm.
I just kind of want to take a moment to kind of breathe because, as I was reading, you were talking about your blog from last week, and I was like, oh yeah. Let me go back and look at a couple of mine where I was like crying.
Mhm.
And somebody, I think it might have been Instant Mama, was like, you do know that post adoption depression like is a thing,
It's a
right? And I was
thing.
like,
It's a real
it's a
thing.
thing. It's a thing. And Ever the activist, I call up my agency and was like, why can y'all don't have no brochures on post adoption
About
depression?
post-adoption depression.
And they were like, oh
I
yeah,
need
it
to
is
tell
a
folks
thing.
about this.
And they were like, it is a thing. And it really is a thing. And it may or may not be hormonal like a new biological mom, but it really is a dramatic change in your life. And it's real and you have to deal with it. In addition to just figuring out, especially when you're dealing with kids who have experienced trauma, you got to figure out how to recharge your battery every now and again because it's just sometimes not it's you can go on those hills and some of those low points can last for like Route 66 goes on and
Right.
on, so you really have to kind of figure out how to take care of yourself.
I looked up some stuff about post-adoption depression. So there actually was a study that was done in March 2012, and it was published in a um, Advances in Nursing Science. So it was a survey based on 300 mothers who had adopted in the past 2 years, and they said that around 18 to 26% of adoptive mothers struggle with post-adoption depression. What's
Mhm.
interesting, I didn't see anything about fathers, and that's
Oh.
interesting. So I might do a little bit more reading to see if I find anything about the father side.
Hmm.
But basically, they said that it's really correlated with having unrealistic and unmet parental expectations, um, not
Hmm.
really bonding with the child as quickly as people expect, and having that shame and guilt from maybe not feeling, all those loving motherly feelings with the child that you expected to feel. And then the perceived lack of support from family and friends. So
Hmm.
those are the three things that people report having. And then basically they said fatigue is the biggest indicator of this. And so when I think about me taking to my bed and I was like, I'm tired. I don't I cannot do anything today. She doesn't need a bath today. I'm not cooking today. I'm tired. I'm in the bed. I'm watching TV. Please take. I cannot do it. And you know what? Um, One thing I feel like I'm blessed because I have the luxury to do that. And so I was thinking about you, and I was like, you might not have, as a single mother, you might not have the luxury to. I was luxuriating between the sheets. Like I'm done. I'm just like I'm so glad that I have a partner that can pick it up when I put it down. You know.
Well, Well,
So
yeah, sometimes it can be challenging, but you know what? At 13, Hope can kind of fend for herself
well,
for a
that's
couple of
true.
hours. And usually I check out on Sunday afternoons for a minute. I take a time out on Sunday afternoons because for some reason I get really emotional and I get very agitated on Sundays. And like, seriously, by the time we get back from church of all places, I'm like royally pissed off. I don't even know why. I'm just pissed off. And I mean, this week. This week I even went to altar call and one of the associate
You
pastors
need
was like,
some prayer. You
"Oh,
need some
it's
a little holy water.
yeah, because I could just feel myself like, and so and so I go up to the altar and he's like, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? What do you want me to pray for you today?" And I was like, "I just adopted a 13-year-old." And he was like, "Oh, wow. So is there
Let's
something
take you over
specific?"
to the special place for prayer.
So he was
Sister
like,
so
but
and so,
no,
come over here.
it didn't really click at first. And he was like, well, is there something specific? And I was like, the something specific is that I adopted a 13-year old.
You get it? What's
And,
happening?
and then he was like, got it, And so, but I usually treat her to a red box twice a week because for
Hmm.
the low, low price of $1.25 and you get coupons, I can post her up in her room for a good hour, 90 hour,
And that's
20
it.
minutes. And like, I give her a popsicle, her red box, and I get in my
Is that the
room.
post-adoption depression like snack pack?
That's my snack pack. Here is like the here is
I
like
need to make one for Nana then.
I save up the like most sugary treat for her, and I'm like, and she is like, oh my god, I get to eat chips and I can watch a movie in my room. Like I can watch a movie in my room. She still thinks that it's like awesome, and I'm like, here you go, I got your movie. Bye. Like, and I just check out. And so, because she's a little bit older, there's a little bit of flexibility that I have there. If she was much younger, like Nana, I certainly couldn't do that. But um,
Hmm.
oh, by the way, for anybody, if anybody's watching this live, the Q&A box is open. Oh my goodness, something just happened with my media player. I'm not really sure why that opened, but oh, and my virus database has been updated. But one of the things that I sent, and I tweeted this out to Mimi earlier this week, was an interesting blog I came across when I was searching about things around self-care for adoptive parents. And there's a blog, and we'll put it in the show notes, called The Importance of Self-Care to Adoptive Parents. And it was a really great blog because it just had 10 things that you should do for yourself. And there were things that, like 50 pleasures, write down things you would find pleasure in and actually do them. Find a support group. Oh, my agency has a support group, at least for folks in my program, once a month. And then they're adding a singles one. So I'll have two support groups that
How
I
do
can
you
give to
like
my
your
agency.
support group?
Um, I like it. It's helpful. Sometimes it's more helpful than others, but it's a good group. And I guess it's funny because I'm almost like one of the seniors in the group now because I'm post adoption, and many of the people, you can come at any stage in our program, and so they ask a lot of questions, and so there it's not like there are a lot of people kind of grappling with the same things that I'm grappling with. Some of those folks that like we came in together, and I know that they're grappling with them at home, but they're not coming out to the group. So we kind of keep in touch in other ways. But
Okay.
generally, the support group is good. It's good. I'm glad that I make the effort of going, and Hope goes with me because they have childcare, and she knows that this is something that will make me be a better parent. So, that's important. Some of the other things that they listed, and certainly, like I said, it'll be in the show notes, so definitely check it out. Positive self-talk, which I thought was important because we focus so much on positive self-talk for the kids, and we don't necessarily do it for ourselves. Accept do-overs, avoid overcommitting, and focus on what's important. Get adequate sleep, which I think is completely and wholly unrealistic. Like, and strive to stay healthy. Strive to stay healthy and spiritual renewal. But that sleep one, when you said that you were so tired,
Girl.
I am. I just thought back to when Hope came to visit me that week in the fall before her placement, and I
You
was
mean the time when you let her look like Don King? That time? You were like, I refuse to pick out your afro tonight. Go to bed.
yes. And so, and I just remember there have been a couple of times where I just shut down, and it wasn't pretty. But I just remember when she first came to visit me, that was the most fatigue I had ever felt in my entire life. And I just was
Mhm.
like, I don't know how people do this. And I didn't even physically have her. Like, I can't even imagine like actually having birthed her or having a C-section and having scars to show for it. I can't even
Right.
imagine what that kind of tired feels like. But it's really, the fatigue is real. So.
Yeah, I don't. I do want us to talk a little bit more about that. I think those are great suggestions, and actually, I've started taking some of them, and I can kind of talk a little bit about what I've started doing for self-care. But I do want to go back to post-adoption depression. So,
Mhm.
and maybe why people don't talk about it much. Um, I think a lot of times you're already in the system, so people look at you as though, well, this is what you wanted, right? You actively took steps to adopt a child. So complaining about a child and saying anything about you're tired or it's overwhelming or any of those type of things, you feel like people will judge you for that,
Hmm.
right? Because you actively pursued this versus perhaps you were trying to get pregnant or maybe you weren't, but you actively pursued it. So that's one reason why people may not talk about it. The other reason why is because you're already in a system, right? So maybe admitting that you're overwhelmed, you might feel like somebody might come and take your child again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, because they're looking for people to be good parents. And if you're feeling like you're not being a good parent, perhaps they would remove somebody from your custody.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of reasons why people don't, because I don't feel like it's talked about. Like you said, it wasn't brought up immediately, with your adoption. And I don't feel like it's been talked about quite a bit.
Yeah. Um, One thing I wanted to mention, and I mentioned this in the promo for the podcast, I think yesterday, was this notion as women, and especially I think that women of color put even more emphasis on this kind of need to be
Right.
strong and we got this, I got it under control, I got this, I don't need any help, I don't want any help, I don't do therapy, I don't do self care because I'm just, nose to the grindstone. And I think it's really just BS at the end of the day. And I think that we oftentimes, women in general, and especially women of color, just set ourselves up potentially for failure because we're so adamant about trying to prove that we're worthy and able to handle everything that, sometimes a lot of things, they start slipping through the cracks and the next thing you know, the bottom falls out. And a lot of it is preventable, but we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be strong, and then we end up, we are the pillars of the community, and then we end up really just kind of crumbling under the pressure that we really put on ourselves unnecessarily. And we really need to stop that and really take time to breathe and rest and take care of ourselves.
You know, absolutely. Sorry. Absolutely, I agree with you because even with Wood, I even had to stop and ask him, and I said, do you feel like because I had to take to my bed? I kind of like that expression, take it.
It's very Scarlet.
Just take it to my bed, But did he think that that made me a bad mother because I need a break? And he doesn't seem to need the break, in the same way. And so did he think that made me a bad mother? And I was worried that he'd be judging me too. But luckily, I have an awesome husband. So he was like, no, I just kind of think you're already kind of loopy. So it's just like one of the normal things that happen. So you just consider this like par for the course. So I'm like, I feel like that was a little shady, but I'm gonna let you go with that.
Girl, meanwhile, I'm over here thinking, girl, he gave you the setup. Like, you need to take to your bed once a week.
I know, right? I can't take it. I can't take it. But I agree. We do spend a lot of time, although I think that's changing, actually. I do think that more of my friends are starting to be okay with expressing that they're having trouble.
Mm.
And I wonder if it's because we're able to talk to each other a little bit more informally and easily now through social media. We're able to express ourselves on blogs and things like that. Um, I think we have historically black women have been like that, but I do feel like maybe that's changing over time. That people are able to say, I'm tired, I need help, I can't do it, I don't want to do it. It could be a generational thing too,
Yeah.
um, where younger people are just saying, don't want, I don't think I need to suffer to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. So, I mean, I definitely encourage people go to therapy. I mean, and not just the therapy that you may be mandated with your family for the purposes of adoption. Go get your own person. I've been going to therapy for years. People have looked at me side eye. I don't care. It is the most delightfully narcissistic thing that I think a person can do. Delightfully narcissistic. You pay somebody for the pleasure of listening to you talk about your stuff for a whole hour. Do it. You'll enjoy it. I promise you. It is an
so
investment.
that I haven't actually signed up for therapy, but I did get so a friend and so this is what I mean by I think people are starting to break down the barriers. A friend of mine called. We were talking, and she told me that she was having problems with her husband. I was giving her like I'm having motherhood issues, and we both made an accountability pact
Mm,
to sign up for counseling, both of us. And so while I haven't actually made an appointment, I've gone ahead and gotten the authorization to, take that next step to go to counseling.
do
The
it.
other things I wrote about on my blog is I try to exercise. I've done it twice, so good for me.
I thought,
And just reach out for help. So the fact that my mother is coming, the fact that we were able to have that conversation, I'm like, I just want you to come. I just want you. I don't know what she's going to actually do when she gets here, but I just want her to come. And the fact that I'm able to say that to her, that was a big step for me,
good.
And now I feel a little bit more like, okay, maybe I can ask some other people for some stuff too, and I could just take to my bed.
I think we
I
need
want
that
to
on
give
a
a shout
t-shirt.
out to the person that's listening. We have a viewer. So if you have any questions or even comments, you don't have to put them in the form of a question. You can, the Q&A app is open and you can just write whatever you like in there and join in the conversation if you like.
Yeah. Before we leave the topic of self-care, I just kind of wanted to shout out Love and Adoptin's blog talked about self-care for therapeutic parents
Hmm.
today, and it was a really interesting it was an interesting piece. She is her name is Tracy DeWitt, and again the blog is Love and Adoptin. I follow it. It's really kind of an interesting blog, but she talked about therapeutic parents need breaks, but balance is key, and making sure that you don't put your kids in so much stuff while you're trying to get away from them, but that you find meaningful ways of treating yourself. That was my
Right.
editorializing, but it's a great piece. Some pieces of it I'm like, but I'm gonna chew on this piece a little bit more. But definitely encourage folks to check it out. We'll put a link into that.
Okay.
So the next piece, as we talk about self-care and resources that are available to us, Mimi wanted to talk a little bit about this next topic on how families kind of trip into the foster care system. And for me on my blog, when I mentioned this, I kind of thought about how sometimes these issues may disproportionately impact families of color and or low income or poor people, which disproportionately are people of color. But I think that this probably happens more than we realize, and I think that more people don't kind of get caught. But I think that these tough decisions that people find themselves in probably find themselves in the more than not. So from there, I'll turn it over to you, Mimi, to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the thing I want to start talking about is the case of Deborah Harrell. And if you've been following along on the news or Twitter, she's an African American lady. She works at McDonald's, and she didn't have childcare so for the summer. So she was letting her daughter stay at the McDonald's where she worked and play on a laptop during the week, but the laptop got stolen from their house. Someone broke into their house and stole the laptop. And so the daughter suggested that she could go down to the park, and the park is maybe a half a mile away from the McDonald's, although it's reported that it's a mile and a half or 2 miles. But the park it looks like fairly close to the McDonald's. And so she was there for 3 days in a row. And after the third day, a concerned parent asked about her and where her mother was, and she told her that she was at work. And the concerned parent or concerned woman then called the police, and the police came, declared the child abandoned, arrested the mother, and took the child into custody. And this situation just really bothers me for a couple of reasons. One, I grew up as a latchkey kid, and so I understand kind of the risks that go along with that, and just the concerns that that mother had to take into account when she let her child go to the park. The other thing I have concern about is just really the force that was used. You know, that the police would arrest the mother instead of, well, let's take it even back. My concern is with the idea about community. You know,
Mm,
instead of maybe giving the child a number to call, or going with the child to her mother, asking more questions. The police were called, and then CPS then comes and takes the child. And it just really bothers me that we're at a point where there's such a lack of community and a lack of caring that we'll call the police instead of really trying to watch out for other people. And I do think this is, really impacts African Americans disproportionately, because I know that it has to do with economic status too. You know, do you have, and I talk about this on my blog, the ability to navigate through systems? Do you have
mm,
the ability to talk to people and explain what your situation, to kind of make people assured that things are okay? And so
mm.
I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and about how um, race and economics play into the foster care system, and also just about not having resources available to help you um, take care of your child. You know, because you're, you know, either a single mom, or you just don't have the money to pay for childcare. So, what are your thoughts? Did you read anything about this situation?
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that situation much until you sent me the link, but I had still been following the case of Shanisha Taylor in Arizona. And actually, she happened to be on the Today Show earlier. Um, and Hope and I were watching it this morning. I was trying to, I meant to tweet it out, but she was talking about her case, which for folks that don't remember, she was in March. She left her two children, young children, in her car while she went to a job interview, and there was a very dramatic her picture arrest picture showed her with tears in her eyes, and the charges were recently dropped, but her children are still in foster care, and she only sees them on the weekends. And she was talking about that this morning, and you know, these situations really kind of break my heart, because I think that it's easy for a lot of people to go, oh my God, well, she could have done this and that and this and that and this and that. And, you know, we're talking often about people who don't have very many resources, and are reliant on friends and family to kind of help pitch in. And sometimes they don't really have reliable support systems there either. And while there are public resources that may be available, we do a really, really good job in this country of shaming people who utilize
Hmm.
public resources. And so
Absolutely.
you can't have it both ways.
Right.
You can't have it both ways and say, oh my God, you lazy bum, like, you know, you left your kids with you know, the resources that we pay for, and you're lazy and this and that and the other. But at the same, and in the same breath, kind of, you know, judge people very harshly for some of the challenges and decisions that they make when they find themselves with nothing. And you know, I do think that there is a real need for us to kind of take a step back and stop shaming people for their resource needs, because I think that what happens, and what we often find, is that we're not taking care of families by doing that.
Right.
And what we see in these moments are that families need help. And I'm not sure that the help is child removal.
Absolutely. I don't think the help is child removal either. And although CPS has a um, well, verbally they say what their concern is. They want to make sure that families stay together. The actions don't always align with that. Now, I read an article, well, a think piece, I guess. Stacia L. Brown. Um, she has an article talking about what black latchkey families
Mm,
stand to lose, and she talks about growing up, she saw a little kid who was a latchkey kid, and his parents, he was younger than 9, and his mother didn't give him a key, so she would see him around the neighborhood of the building trying to figure out a way to get to the house. Um, but she talks about her grandmother, who used to be a court stenographer, telling her that when her baby cried, if she didn't try to keep her baby quiet, that the neighbors would call CPS.
mm,
And that's a scary feeling to think that, you know, just because I'm trying to do the normal things of motherhood and I'm making the decisions that I think are right for my child based on my understanding of my child. So maybe they're just, the type of child that cries a lot. And I've
mm,
done all that I can do. Or my 9-year-old is mature enough to go to the park and stay and come home for lunch. Those decisions that I'm making are going to be judged, and that CPS can come and decide that I'm not making the right decision and take my child. And what
mm,
she says in there is, for us, noisy nighttime play or unsupervised daytime play doesn't just draw annoyance or concern, it draws authorities. And I think that's a really scary thing for black parents in particular. And I think even for me as an adoptive parent, I still feel like there is a cloud hanging around. Like at any point in time, people are still checking up on me all the time. Like they're coming to my house monthly. And anytime if my neighbor feels like Nana is too loud and she calls and we still have an open case, could that happen to us?
mm,
Or if I make a decision about how I want to raise my child after we're done with this situation, or just in general, black parents making decisions about their children, CPS getting involved and taking their child. And I watched um, Our America, that
mhm.
what's the name? Lisa Ling.
Lisa Ling.
Lisa Ling on. And they had a lady who had a situation with an abusive partner, and she made a mistake. She took a gun to a park and she shot the gun, and they considered her endangering her child. And it was such a process for her to get her children back
Mm,
that some people just cannot go through all of that, right? Some people don't have the economics to go through that. I mean, parenting classes, um, whatever other things that they require you to do, a certain type of living standard, a certain type of, transportation, all those things that people in general might not have, and they're raising their children. They're okay. But it'll be challenging. Once CPS gets involved, then it's hard to get your children back.
it is. It is. Yeah, I saw that show. We didn't talk. We decided not to talk a lot
Right.
about that show a couple of weeks ago, but both of us did watch it and review it, and we chatted about it offline. But yeah, there was certainly a couple of parents on there that really kind of were struggling with, how do they get their kids back, and it's tough to hear those stories on the other side, and know that yes, the goal may be reunification, but it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. So,
Right.
wow.
And perhaps I'm empathetic because I have experiences on both sides of the fence, right?
Hmm.
And so while I'm adoptive parent of a child that's in foster care, and I think that it's the right decision, I've also seen the other side of it, right? And seen people try to get their children back and have a lot of hurdles to overcome, that seem sometimes arbitrary and sometimes overwhelming. And so I see both sides of it. So I'm empathetic to just anybody that is dealing, with a system that I think is such a massive system that sometimes it can be more hurtful than
Mm,
helpful.
yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I just tweeted out the link to the article by Cecilia Brown that Mimi was just talking about a few minutes ago. Um, and
Oh, that was quick. Go ahead with your Twitter
yeah,
skill.
yeah. I was trying,
You know,
we're
just a
trying
few
to get
minutes ago,
better.
we were like, so how do you
How do you
retweet
turn this
stuff?
thing on? And I also tweeted out Love and Adopting's blog from today as well, since we talked a little bit about that. So I want to give both of those bloggers a shout out and say that they were featured on AdWater and Stir. Um,
All right.
so we got 15 minutes left, so let's get on to the ratchet tree.
Get on to the ratchetry. What do you want to talk about? Okay, let me tell you what
I
I
don't know.
want to
Why
talk
don't
about.
you go, you go.
Okay, so I watch way too much reality TV. Way too much reality TV, but I will not be shamed for this. That is my pleasure. So, I have been watching Love and Hip Hop, and this situation with Mimi and her sex tape,
Porn, porn tape,
sex tape,
and nobody called CPS. I'm sorry.
as she calls it. But so I want to talk about a little bit about kind of the impact this has had in her friends. So this I'm trying to tie it into parenting, right? So Mimi has if you don't know, um, Mimi is on Love and Hip Hop. Not me, Mimi. Not this is a different Mimi, okay? Because Mimi don't have no sex tapes that ever gonna come out, okay? Ever gonna come out? I didn't say I had one, but I'm just saying. Anyway,
It was
back
just
to the
like you
subject
just
at hand.
noticed that they all had the
I mean,
same name.
just I did. I was like, wait a minute. People might think that I'm talking about myself, but I'm not, right? I'm talking about a different Mimi on Love and Hip Hop, not on Add Water and Stir. Just clarify. So, Mimi has a sex tape, and she supposedly, with her boyfriend, supposedly it was stolen from their luggage and published, or they agreed to publish it, but apparently it has lighting and camera angles and extra stunts and extra features. So everybody else thinks
Hashtag
this is
curtain
cool.
rod.
Yes. So she has hashtags named after her. So, but the point is, her friends watched the tape and they started crying about how she's a mother and how this is so bad and they wouldn't do it if they were a mother and they have a child to be concerned about. And I just wanted to get your take on what you thought about um, that little piece of ratchetry. And I guess the shaming, I think,
Oh,
of Mimi as a mother and the choices that she makes.
so that happens to be one of my favorite trash TV endeavors, and one of probably the only shows that I managed to peel off of the DVR every week. And so I've been following along, and of course I remember this spring when the whole story actually broke in real time. But
I'm
it
going to
was
tell you, I watched the trailer and I was impressed.
I,
So go ahead, Mimi, with your 40-year-old self. Let me get in the gym and get right to. I'm not
so
doing no
there needs to be lots of
curtain
yoga,
rides because that's dangerous.
acrobatics. Um,
I have
but
good insurance, not that good.
but I'll say that it's interesting because I think that what happened was they pulled in this storyline of the Madonna whore,
Okay,
and I think that they pulled this storyline up, and which was kind of easy because she kind of delivered it on on a plate, to be
right.
honest. But you know, it was interesting to see how her friends reacted versus how her baby's father reacted, which
Mhm.
he seemed like way more low key about it than the girlfriends. But I mean, I guess it's supposed to be your best girlfriends that hold you accountable and keep you in check from doing crazy stuff, right? So, um, on the one hand, I could see. I mean, if it was one of my girlfriends, I'd kind of be like, really, like. Well, first of all, you got some skills. Way, like, wow, I got to kind of step my game up. But secondly, like, I don't think here's the thing. I don't think that they would have moved to shame her if it really had looked like a home video. if it really had looked like some like raw diggity stuff that they just had like for real a tripod versus camera angles and editing and
Hmm.
forget this foolishness that Nico was saying they like stomp the floor and move the camera around and all of this kind of carrying on. I think that the elevation of it from a home movie to a true porn tape is what
Hmm.
made her friends say, "Girl, this is way too much. This is extra." And I think for me, I think I might have probably checked my girlfriend on that too. If I had seen it and said, "Look, this is some not some tomfoolery that y'all did with like a bad $200 camera, but some folks was up in there while you was swinging from the chandeliers and curtain rods." And so and
Well,
so
first of all, I need to take it back though. No matter what, we could be cool ABM, but if you tell me you got a sex tape, I'm not having a viewing party to do it. I don't understand what's
well,
happening, why
yeah,
everybody is watching
watching. Well, and
watching the tape.
I was kind of
We're not
like,
that close.
right.
None of
Well,
my
and
friends that
and
close. I need to see the insides of your JJ like
right.
that.
Well, and I
Oh,
mean,
I
I
gotta
thought it
put
was
explicit on this podcast now.
but it was interesting because like yeah, like Jocelyn and with the other child, like people were watching it and it was like the way that it was filmed, not their tape but the show,
Hmm.
was made it almost seem like everybody was watching it on a big screen. And I was like, this
Right.
is
Too much.
way too much.
Too much. Too much.
And y'all have all way too much time on your hands too, so
Right.
um you know
But there
yeah, I don't
are
think I don't think
people.
you're right. I don't know if I would have watched it to begin
I
with.
don't think I would have watched it, but I'm kind of a judgy person anyways. I probably would have judged, but at the same time, there are women who are sex workers who have children. And I wonder if there's a way for you to have your job be something and I'm not saying Mimi's a sex worker, but I'm just saying there are people who do do that for a living, which apparently she does, but do that for a living and who have children and who are raising children to be adults, and perhaps the conversations that they have with their kids are different than the ones that we may have around sex and openness and um I don't know, maybe there's just a different way that I'm
Well,
just not familiar with because that's not a lifestyle that I would have chose for myself.
yeah. Well, I think that what's interesting is that if you look at her interviews on this last episode and in the last couple of episodes where she was talking about why she did the contract, which I think is really more why she did the whole
Mhm.
higher end produced tape that led to a contract, is that it has become to some degree apparently somewhat acceptable to get put on with a sex tape. I mean, you
That may be
know,
true.
and that this is a different path. And I'm like, okay, so love and hip hop checks are apparently not enough. Now you want to secure your daughter's future. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not ever going to secure Hope's future.
I will check you. I will check you.
I'm not,
But but
uh,
but that is a good point really though about how maybe reality culture is impacting, and she's not a little girl. She's our age, I think.
yeah, she's
So
my age. Yeah.
yeah, how that's impacting um how people look at celebrity and how to make it, so it's no longer the things that we were taught, maybe like go to school, get a job, have a career,
You know,
start a business. And she has a business, that's the thing
right,
about it, but that apparently wasn't fast enough. And
right.
so the culture now has said that maybe, and I think we saw this with Lawrence Fishburne's daughter, I think
Yeah.
Montana Fishburne too,
Hmm.
who said, I want to make a sex tape because I got put, Kim Kardashian got put on through that. Paris Hilton blew up through that. Other people
Yeah.
have blew up from that. And maybe that is a way for me to get my ticket to the next level.
Yeah.
And the reality is, well, based on kind of what's happened, that obviously doesn't work for black people. That
Well,
don't work. They don't work
No,
for you.
no, it's not just black people. It doesn't work for poor people. See, the difference is Kim and Paris were already rich.
Well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's a good point.
They had parents who could go clean their stuff up.
Mhm. Mhm.
That while they was
Good point.
already out, they were already out running the street and doing all that kind of stuff. And so then they were like, "Oh, well, we did this video."
Well, Montana Fishburne is not poor, right? That's
No,
Lawrence
she's
Taylor
not
Fishburne's
poor.
daughter. So that he probably has a little cash. I did tweet that,
Yes,
Furious Styles was
right.
fine.
But
Anyway,
but
I
here's the
digress.
but here's the thing. Like he wasn't like I'm gonna clean up your mess. He was like
That is
that was
true.
some
He was like,
that was
"You on your own, girl."
he was like that was
Who
some
is that?
foolishness. We
I
don't do
don't
that.
know Montana.
We don't know her. We don't know her. We don't do that. We don't do that. And so that's the difference is that, there were parents that intervened because I'm sorry, like Kim Kardashian's mom, like, will pimp out the whole family.
Right. For
she
cash,
she
quickly.
has like has created a cottage industry off of this tape. Cause won't none of them like I mean the dad was famous and had his stuff, but like they won't really, and so
People do need to understand that that is probably a 1 in a million situation that she
right,
was able to do that, and part of that, like you said, already came from connections that she
right.
already came from being around certain people, and probably just understanding a little bit of the business and the legal side of
Mhm.
things. So it's
And
not going to work for anybody, and I don't think it's worked for Mimi. She's
no,
losing.
she's losing. She's losing.
Losing.
Because the other thing is, as fly as she, was and is at 40, and I'm 41, and go girl, like, wow. But here's the thing: those chicks were also like teens.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're talking about young women who have their
That is
whole lives
true.
who have a whole lifetime ahead of them where people might remember how they got put on but nobody cares anymore because she's on the cover of Vogue with Kanye, like
Said
so
Mimi's never
nobody,
getting the cover
but
of Vogue. I
Mimi,
mean, why can't you let Mimi be great?
please, child. Like, I'm sorry. Like, nobody was having a conversation about attorneys and all of this carrying on about getting on the cover of what was it, Hip Hop Weekly. Like, nobody
That's
checking
true.
for Hip Hop Weekly.
I mean, she tried to turn it down, like, no, I need more money. He was like,
No,
never mind, I'll just put you on for free.
we're just gonna go get one of them Google pictures and slap that on the cover.
Losing again, just
Listen,
losing again. But anyway, we're like at
anyway, so anyway,
9:58. So that was a good. So we are going to have to add this into the Add Water and Stir podcast because that made us pretty hype. This little
yeah.
piece of it, but I think we got to move on to recommendations. And the reality is, I do not have a good recommendation for today. So I'm going to pass the recommendation over to you.
So my recommendation is a play off of our main topic for the night, which was self care, and the wonderful folks off of the NBC show. I don't know what was it. Was that Community? No, it wasn't Community. It was the other one with Amy Poehler. What's the name of that show? I can't even remember. Anyway, treat
You mean the
yourself.
one where she's a state worker?
Yes.
Works for the Parks and
Parks and
Recreation.
Recreation, Parks and Recreation, and they're the two characters, or they're the guy and the Indian guy and the black girl, and they always like they have the thing every week, and they go treat yourself. So my recommendation this week is treat yourself, and
Treat
and
yourself.
and I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, but not really. Like, no, you really do need to do something, find something to do in the next 2 weeks before you come back to the next Google Plus hangout with us, and treat yourself. And then we want you to tweet us and tell us what you're doing.
Tweet us and tell us how you treated
How you
yourself.
treated
We need to get a
yourself.
little hashtag.
We need to get a hashtag. Tweet yourself. Treat yourself.
The
Um,
wine, the wine, the wine.
and so I've added, I actually, you can find me at adoptedblackmom.wordpress.com, and I've actually added a podcast page for Add Water and Stir. And there's an opportunity for you to send me a direct email in there. Send me an email, tell me what you're doing to treat yourself with self care over the
We'll
next
read
couple
it
of weeks.
on. We can read it on the
Yeah.
next
Yeah,
podcast.
yes. And shout out to a couple of the folks that have certainly given us some great feedback. A serial adopter says she is so busy. Wow, serial adopter, thanks for logging on, and Audrey, thanks for logging on. Future adopter, she's like, we're gonna put her on as our publicist, man. She's like,
Right.
so
I
yeah,
hope
you can
she
also find
likes
me at
this
Black Mom.
podcast because we got a little turned up. This wine situation here. We might have to do this every other
Every time.
Thursday with the wine too.
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Black Mom, adoptive at a black at adoptive Black
The
Mom.
wine.
Yeah, no more drinking.
So you can find me at. Did you get? She can be found on Twitter at adoptive black mom. You can find me on the WordPress at complicated melody with an I .wordpress.com, and you can find me on the Twitters at Mimi Complex. Is that right? Or Complex? Mimi Complex, girl. Mimi Complex, and you can tweet us, and we'd like to hear what are you doing to treat yourself this week. So, all
Yes.
right.
So we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple weeks.
All
Have a
right.
great 2 weeks.
All right. Good night.
Good night.